developing story right now from the Supreme Court. It has agreed to pick up a case, and it may actually restrict asylum claims from those arriving at the southern border. Now, the court has agreed this morning to hear an appeal from the Justice Department over a practice known as metering. At issue is whether the federal government can turn away asylum seekers at the U.S.-Mexico border if too many migrants are trying to apply. This has been done by both Democrat and Republican administrations. For more on how this may proceed, let's bring in our senior judicial analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano. No decision will be until next June, but this is a significant one because this was part of what we saw during those open borders, just flooding of the borders, people looking for asylum. Some have real cases, but many, the critics say, don't, Judge.
So your right to asylum, if you're a foreign person seeking, and fleeing another country, your right to asylum attaches once you are physically present in the U.S. Once you're physically here, you can make the application and you stay until the application is heard. What presidents have done, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, is this practice of metering, where they stop people before they physically get here and screen them for asylum. And if they're not qualified for asylum, they never physically get here, and so they don't have that automatic right. Nevertheless, an appellate panel of judges in California ruled that stopping them in Mexico is the functional equivalent of them being here, and their right to asylum attaches. That's what the Supreme Court resolved. The Trump administration has not been following this practice during his second term. This goes back to his first term, even though the Biden administration did it as well. But the Supreme Court has agreed to hear the challenges to it.
All right. A lot of challenges when it comes to this indictment of former FBI Director James Comey, and a new development has just come into us moments ago. So a judge has ruled that there were disturbing patterns of profound investigative missteps when the DOJ secured the indictment. They are looking at grand jury materials. It's a 24-page opinion, Judge, but basically what it boils down to is that they believe potentially privileged communications were used with that grand jury, and they're seeing unexplained irregularities in the transcript. Comey's lawyers wanted the transcripts. There were concerns of irregularities. They say it may have tainted the case. We know this is also going with the other track. There's a whole other judge hearing whether or not Lindsay Halligan, the prosecutor, the U.S. attorney interim, was inappropriately put in. So this is another sort of win, if you will, if this judge is saying, hey, the grand jury irregularities. Do you think this is going to be a bigger issue as it comes forward? Or does the DOJ have an argument now to come back and say, this is why we used it to get the indictment? Here's how we explain the grand jury inconsistencies.
Well, there's more than one grand jury here, because the first grand jury refused to indict James Comey. So the Comey defense lawyers are looking for what was told to that grand jury and how they deliberated and how they ruled. And they're looking for the same information from the second grand jury. The second grand jury, the one that did indict him, had one presenter before them, and that was U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan, her third day on the job. If she is found to have been invalidly appointed, no fault of hers, but if she's found to have been invalidly appointed, then the indictment is dismissed, and they cannot get a new indictment because the statute of limitations has expired. If she is found to have been validly appointed, then this issue of the grand jury transcripts comes into play. What did she tell the grand jury? She had no experience with grand juries prior to this one. And what was told to the first grand jury that decided not to indict him? I have to tell you, Bianca, it is very, very rare for grand jury materials to be released to defense counsel unless someone is about to testify in trial who also testified before the grand jury. So something is amiss here. We don't know exactly what it was that this judge ordered. The most secretive things we have, aside from national security secrets, grand jury testimony to be released.
Right. They won't even get Jeffrey Epstein's. And so you have to wonder the political, tilt of a judge who, as you just said, is willing to release something which is never supposed to be released in any circumstance.